How's that? So you get around 6 grand.
I know that they're better. Thanks for adjusting the air conditioning.
Yeah, James so far, the only one who doesn't want to share.
One of the responsibilities that comes with hosting
the
annual
natural
resource system management
just within the,
is the awarding for the second year of the Reserve Artist Naturalist Award. Something that Hamilton started last year at Blue Oak, and we are continuing this year. And many thanks to Zach, who got everything down to us in fine shape, and enough time for us to actually take care of it. And it helps when you have Lane Tolving, in addition to being an excellent administrative assistant, jack of all trades, is a former trophy wife.
Yes.
A trophy wife?
She and her husband, Alan, ran a trophy shop.
And the story gets even better, but we'll save that for after.
No way.
Yeah.
There is nothing this woman can't do.
Well, yeah,
So-
do you see the rolling of the eyes?
So this year's award, when it was first explained to me by Mike Hamilton last year, I immediately thought of
me.
For a short moment.
Bob actually have alcohol tonight? I thought of this couple. They were an integral part of the history of this building and this place. Is Robert and Sophia Shepard, who were the longest running owners of this establishment here, from 1967 to when Sophia passed away in 2003. They owned this place and ran it as the Galleria. And it was a combination. Bob was a very, very accomplished watercolor specialist, and I put some of his pictures out here. Some of you may have seen them in the hallway, going back and forth to the bathroom this week. But I put them out here so you could see them, and there's a couple on display there, including one that was commissioned for Kathy and my wedding in 1994. It's important I get that date right. Because
We'll talk about it later.
by a good friend, and it was done specifically of a scene that we really liked in the desert, and a beautiful smoke tree there, which he was very well known for. And so I was actually here a couple of times in the early 90s when Bob and Sophia ran this place, and I remember it being chock full of antiques and wonderful paintings, and it's hard to find a Sheppy. You can find a few online now, but all the ones in Borrego have been snatched up, and people were generous but reticent when they loaned the ones in the hallway to me. The reticent part was the fact that they weren't convinced originally that UC Irvine was serious about having a research center here. They were afraid that they would donate their paintings and that we would fold and sell it to some motel or something. And I tried to assure them, but so the ones in the hallway are on loan. So Bob did this great job of painting and interpreting desert scenes, and Sophia was a naturalist. She taught high school biology for how many years?
Probably 10, 15, quite a while.
So, many years in Orange County. This was sort of a weekend operation initially for them. They commuted from Orange County and ran the Galleria on weekends, and A few years ago, when we were starting to decorate this place after the construction was completed, I had Kelly Jorgensen get us some, help me Bob, I'm forgetting the artist's name up there behind you. Armand Ballet. Paintings, which were really well known around here. They were also conveniently easy to get a hold of. And so I asked her to get 3 of those and use them on that wall there. And only later did I discover, looking at old Borrego Sun newspapers, that Armand Ballet had been a featured artist by the Shuppies here during the time that they, in the 70s, early 80s, when they ran the Galleria. So there were a lot of connections, and Sophia actually published a booklet called A Naturalist View, Observations of Some of the Creatures and Plants of the Anza-Borrego Desert. I think that went back to the 1980s. Yeah, copyright 1985. So it just seemed a natural fit, and but unfortunately it's posthumous. Bob passed away in the late 90s, and Sophia then in I think 2003. But we've invited tonight, there are 2 grandsons, Clint Sheppy, his wife Tiffany, and Danny Sheppy, and I'd like to have them come up. Let's have you guys hold this. You don't get to keep this one. But you can. It's a perpetual and it goes around, but your parents or your grandparents are second on the list there. Designates them as the 2017 recipients of the Reserve Artist Naturalist Award. All right. And Danny has donated this copy to our library.
Oh. Cool. I hope that's not your last copy.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
We've got plenty around.
So if I need yes. Okay, well, I hope you'll take a look at some of the paintings back there. And
Well, can you recall, as grandchildren, any special memories until it's coming to?
this could take a while.
Well, I mean, just, what comes to mind when you come here, and when would you normally come here to be here? So what brought you here, besides grandma and grandpa?
Yeah, so regular visits to see them, and so my grandfather had his display of paintings, and when you enter into the doors to the right, so he'd have his variety of paintings in there. Where the real magic was for us was right behind these doors, is where my grandmother had her formaldehyde jars of all different types of animals, insects, drawers of labeled insects, and just, that was our heaven there. So we get to go look through there and see all the different specimens of all of her naturalist collections, and that's where everything opened up. Also in the back, she had their pet tortoise, TT, and then their chuckwalla, pet chuckwalla. So, I mean, this was a magical place for us.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to tell the story of the Cadillac parked in the...
Yeah, so the locker room, I don't know if everybody's kind of familiar with the whole facility here. The locker room, that's where it was with the country club beforehand. So my grandfather thought he'd have a great idea and basically just chop saw a opening just enough for a Cadillac to squeeze through. So the whole process, putting ramps up and this and that, I mean, it literally would fit perfect. But you had to watch it, this and that, and it was his pride and joy. For me, sitting here, because this was kind of like the no-touch zone as kids. Don't touch anything else. Go to the back. Go outside, boys. So, we really appreciate what UCI and Jim has done here. It's really spectacular. My grandparents would be truly, truly happy to see where this has come and where it's going, being the fact that my grandma is a biologist and my grandpa loved the desert and art. So we appreciate this and everything that is going on here.
Awesome.
And his wife Tiffany are both UC Santa Barbara grads. I
Gotcha.
don't know, is Danny? San Diego State, I hope.
I'll work my way up.
That's perfect.
Again,
It's okay.
Palomar.
yes.
So are you, are any of you artists or?
It's funny you say that. We did not, at least my brother and I did not get the artistic ability. We're thinkers, but that fell on my younger sister, RANA. She had the artistic ability. My mom did too. She had beautiful artwork, and I kept pushing her to do art and stuff, but I don't know, it did not hit my brother.
As my uncle said, we could literally paint the side of a barn.
Yeah,
So we noticed in some old pictures that, you could walk through there, it wasn't walled in. Do you remember it being that way, or did it always have walls behind you there?
Yeah, so this was where the wall was, right here where the windows ended. So this is where he would do his painting over here. They would have a kind of a divider that they would move to separate the gallery from the living quarters and everything else. Usually right about where you're standing is where they would have that divider, so they'd have that thing that there for her space. And then this was all the family living quarters back here, So
What was in the wings that are now the office?
that was my grandmother's collections of all of her, all the collections of things. So that was kind of their storage area for a lot of things up there.
Okay. And then that collection ended up where?
Yeah, I wondered that. I think it went to the College of the Desert after she passed away.
Yes. Originally they tried for Borrego Springs, or I think high school, but then they didn't have the need for the collection, so then the College of the Desert, I believe, is
And
where
that was a wiser
ended up.
choice.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
we wanted to make sure, it was something that we, as a family, felt that she worked hard for. She tormented her own kids year after year, going to the mountains and catching bugs at night. That it went somewhere that would be appreciated, not just lost or thrown away, because it was such a collection. It would be hard at the time for one of us to do something with it. So at least we made sure that was hopefully the right choice for it.
Early last year, the first time I met Clint and Tiffany, they came here one day and
Out of the blue.
out of the blue on a
That's
weekend.
what we do, because
With their
this is our
dogs.
home, kind of, our family.
The dogs. They left the
Our
dogs
kids.
in the car, so I went up to them and I said, thank you for leaving your dogs in your pickup truck, thank you.
Yeah.
But it coincided, I happened to be showing around that day the chancellor from UC Riverside. He and his wife were here and had asked if they could come down and see the place and go for a hike. And I said, well, sure. And so I met him over here, and was it Saturday? I don't know, Saturday or Sunday.
One of those days, yeah.
And in the middle of it, Elaine comes out with these people I've never met before and explains who they are, and I was thrilled to see them and everything. And they had their two kids, boy and girl?
2 boys.
Two boys.
Okay.
You have a dog?
They didn't have a dog. I never saw it.
We got one dog now, another one coming.
I haven't hungry.
I'm gonna have my hands full here soon.
So the chancellor actually gave his business card to their oldest son and told him to call him in
that's right.
10 years.
Yeah, Thomas is like, man, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't know whether he's going to Santa Barbara, Riverside, or Irvine.
Hey, any of the UCs, good. Good.
Yeah, like I said, Jim, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's an
Great
honor.
historian of our family and
Yeah.
carrying on their passion and tradition and stuff, so it's
Well, we hope you'll come back many, many times.
oh, for sure.
Did your grandmother have a favorite plant that she always referred to? We know that your grandfather liked smoke tree. Seems you have some affinity to that.
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't
The
recall.
Ocotillo was always one of the prominent ones in paintings for both of them, and
Yeah.
reading her literature there and how she describes it and everything else, definitely the Ocotillo is always one of the ones that kind of hit home for us.
She liked chuckle-walls.
Yeah.
So
We
maybe-
have that around here.
Yeah.
Maybe one of our two efficiency units, we have the smoke tree and the Ocotillo room that maybe we can
There
do
you go.
something special for those two rooms.
Yeah. But showing her love for the desert and wildlife and everything else, I don't think she would exclude any other plants. But yes.
Well, thank you guys
Thank
very,
you.
very much.
Yes.
A video produced about Sagehen.
But the Sagehen Forest Project. So you guys, if you want, you can be guinea pigs. So Farthen is producing and shooting and everything, a movie that we're now starting to show. And we have to get permissions for these things, so it's going to be in 4 pieces. And I'll just go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. So it'll take about 5 minutes to set up.
All right. Well,
Okay, so just next year for those.
So we lost everything up. We all have what we have on our backs.
The aftermath has left half the town completely destroyed. The fire has engulfed around 400 square miles. 1,600 homes and buildings have been destroyed. Convoys of vehicles are moving south. Those who have reached safety are staying in shelters 5 hours south. The hope is a chance of rain tomorrow, but it's only a chance.
Wow. I couldn't even imagine.
I mean, that dead fire not far from where you're living, I think, Gore fire. You know, that's kind of where I work. You know, it's kind of what we do. I came to Sagehen in 2001, and it was to run this fuel station and try to figure out what it needed to do to work. And so I didn't really know what these places did because it's not my world. But I came here thinking that I was a pretty strong environmentalist. And I was from the perspective that if you cut one tree, you were doing something wrong. But moving here was pretty eye-opening. So one of the things that we're really concerned about is trying to get our forest back to something that's kind of healthy. And I don't know, are you interested in the story or?
Well, yeah, no, I'm curious, because, we have a lot of fires, but, I'm an outdoorsman, I hike, I ski.
I tell you what, as long as you're patient enough to listen to my story, I'll keep buying the beers.
No, my beer runs out.
Okay.
Oh.
There are little segments for the web.
He kept you, that was
Okay, wait. Let's pause to consider one question. In the immortal words of David Byrne, how did I get here? How did we get here?
You're really looking big picture there, Frank. Oh, nice.
Look at Indy, isn't that great?
Smash. Oh, no wonder they have the lights.
There, see that? Ice changes everything. It wipes out everything that was there before, and when it melts, it raises the sea level by 400 feet and opens up North America for the first time to these guys and these guys. Humans evolved in the savannah. We have an innate atavistic preference for this kind of landscape. Grasslands, forests, but not too much, water, a view, wildlife. This inborn preference is expressed over and over again in every culture and every time. It's in our art, in our parks and protected spaces, in our homes. We seek these landscapes out, and where they don't exist, we create them. Natural fire does a great job of breaking up monolithic forests and introducing productive areas of grasslands and meadows. But why wait for natural fire? Paleo-Indians in North America started lighting the fires themselves, and they continued for 13,000 years. Our forests evolved depending on regular low-intensity fire. The forests and the people found equilibrium. So what changed? In a word, the managers. The new management saw forests not as a source of water, food, shelter, but as an asset to be liquidated as quickly as possible. It's a gold rush that's lasted 150 years. Where the valuable trophy trees were gone, we began managing the regrowth like a tree farm. Every acre the same. And as a commodity, every tree taken out by fire is that much less money in our pocket. So we began putting out the small natural fires. Large legacy trees are fire resistant. The small trees and brush that grew in to replace them are definitely not. And with the buildup of fuels, when things finally do catch fire, well, these fires are catastrophic, destroying the entire forest that in many cases will never regrow. We can't log our way out of this problem. That's what got us into it. The stem of the tree represents only 3 or maybe 4% of the fire danger. It's the material that gets left in the forest, the branches, the needles, the brush, the small trees. That's the problem. We need to thin and restructure our forests so that we can allow natural low-intensity fire to return. But thinning millions of acres is very expensive. Maybe there's another way?
in 2002, the Forest Service came out with their Certified Battle Framework 2, which basically said that we really don't know what to do with our forests. However, we're proposing to implement this strategy called SPLATs, which was strategically placed land area treatments, which is you just thin a bunch of blobs in the landscape. And the idea was that if a big fire hit an area that had been splatted, that it would slow the fire down, bring it down, and buy you some time. Or if a fire started in an area that had been splatted, it wouldn't get up into the canopy and take off. And that was all good, we thought, except that the only research that had been done with this in the real world was in a flat cheatgrass desert in western Utah. And so here we are making a decision to implement a strategy in terrain that has topography and trees. And it was like, how can we help land managers think about this? And so we had two guys at Berkeley, a guy named John Battles, who's a forest ecologist, and another guy named Scott Stevens, who's a fire ecologist. And then we partnered with our local Truckee Ranger, District Ranger, Joanne Robeek, and they got a bunch of money from the Joint Fire Sciences Program. And the idea was to actually see if splats made sense here. And the approach taken by the researchers was they wanted one of the best data sets of a forest. And then they wanted that great data set and use it to inform the fire models that everybody uses for strategizing on how to manage a fire. Now all of a sudden we're sitting with scientists and land managers in the same room, and we did not have any common ground from which to work. You know, the land managers were kind of a little unsure about working with scientists, and the scientists really wanted to do their thing, but they didn't want to upset the land managers. And it took us a long time to create a relationship of trust between those two groups. And the key piece in this whole thing was, John calls me up one day and says, hey, you know, we've got all these plots, so we have 531 plots under here on a 500 meter grid. Every one of these plots is 500 square meters. Every tree is tag numbered. We know a lot about the structure of this 9,000 acres. And when we were using that data and putting it in their model, we were getting different results than we were using their data. And it's like John goes, well, you know, they're going to laugh at us. You know, something's not right. And I said, well, John, you know, let's just talk to them and let's see if we can go out into the forest and see if we're looking at the forest through the same lenses. And so the Forest Service has this flip book with pictures, and you stand and you flip until you see the picture that kind of matches what you're looking at. And if you think that that lines up, then you pull that little code out, and that's how you encode the model for that forest structure. So I said, well, okay, let's go stand at some of our plots and do this. And so we did. And as we were standing there, we were going through our flip charts, and we stopped. It turns out we were all on the same page. So our lenses were right. We were seeing the forest the same way. So what's the problem? And then it was like, well, maybe it's the model. And so sure enough, it was the model. And we also were able to redo it to get a more predictable response. Well, it also got us one of the few fire histories on the east side. And we were able to get data back using coring old stumps back to the 1600s. We got great data back to the 1700s. And what we saw was pre-contact, the mean return for fire here was about 2.4 years, and it was low intensity. Post-contact, high intensity, and about a 24-year return interval. So you can see how the structure, the kind of fire we were having here shifted when the white guys got here. It started changing the place. There's a fire in here somewhere every 2.4 years, but it wasn't big, it was kind of small, which absolutely supports what the indigenous people say was how they managed this landscape.
So how much land out of the 9,000 have you splatted, I guess?
Well, we actually decided not to splat.
Oh, okay.
Because we have those goshawks here.
Got it,
So we can't, so they would interfere with the pattern. You know, we have roads, we have water, you know, we have all these.
It's not that flat Utah desert here.
Exactly, it's
right,
not the
so
lawn.
it wasn't as conducive.
Yeah.
It's not the lawn, right?
It's not the lawn.
Right.
So, you know, the project looks way different than a splat would.
Okay.
But it's also you know.
But the base concepts from that splat testing and those models is what
Yes.
got you.
It helped inform us.
Got it.
But it also helped move us to more than just worrying about fire, more worrying
Wow.
about forest health.
Sure.
You know, because all the trees, remember they're clear cut here.
Right.
They're all about the same age. A lot of species no longer exist.
Right, right.
You know, what about wildlife? What about fish?
Right.
What about water? You know, what about?
So instead of just thinking about forest fires, you're thinking about the ecosystem.
Absolutely. You know, why not try to do this holistic thing and try to get as much ecosystem function back? You know, a lot of it has been lost over time.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh gosh, that's fun. Okay.
That's great, George.
It's okay?
So I can't remember, did you introduce yourself at the beginning?
Well, I'm George Nolte. I'm a member of the board of the Elder Leopold Foundation. I'm sitting in a special place. Behind me, you can see a cabin that Starker Leopold built back in the early 50s. Starker, the son of Aldo Leopold.
You know, I started becoming nervous about fire, and my primary focus was trying to protect the data set from this place. So it's got a pretty long-term data set from a scientific perspective. And in my mind, it would be bad to have a large standard placing fire come through here and remove that information. There are tons of places out west to study the after effects of a standard placing fire. We also cooperatively, collaboratively manage this forest in partnership with the Forest Service. You know, they're an agency and we're an academic institution. And we didn't always see eye to eye, but we started talking.
Being in California, it's natural to cite one of California's own, and that's John Muir. That famous expression where when you touch one thing, you find out that it's connected to all other things. So in a holistic sense, we understand that's how the environment works, but that's how the human environment works as well. And if you try and do what Aldo Leopold strove to do, is to understand how people relate to the land, you really need to think how the pieces fit together. The way we do that with organizations and individuals most effectively is through collaboration.
So what's the right thing to do here at Sagehen? We weren't comfortable with just doing something here whose sole focus was one thing. We want to bring a very broad group of interests together to sort this out. And it took a while for them to finally go, okay. We launched a big collaborative effort, and it was imperative to us to have the timber industry, SPI, to the environmentalists, Sierra Forest Legacy, and then we wanted everything in between.
I know what you're thinking. Collaboration is hard. You didn't have to do it, so why did you? I'll give you 3 reasons. First, because it's the right thing to do. People value different things that forests provide. Water, oxygen, fish, wildlife, aesthetics, recreation, timber, and those values don't change because you argue with them. So, in managing a shared resource like forests, you have to pretend like you don't know what your values are and protect all of them. The second reason? Because you can't steamroll other people. When you let the kid who cut the cake choose the first piece, that kid is wildly happy. But everybody else, not so much. And the third reason? Because it works. In 1906, the brilliant Francis Galton went to the county fair, but he couldn't just enjoy it like a normal person. He became obsessively interested in a contest they were holding where the public would guess the weight of a cow. Galton was convinced that experts would know a whole lot more about cows and be much better at guessing than the average person. He took all of the data, the guesses, back to his laboratory and did some analysis, and it turns out he was wrong. When you averaged all of the guesses, what you got was the weight of the cow. And this average was far closer than even the guesses of the experts. As it happens, Galton was not the first nor the last to wonder about the wisdom of the crowd. which seems to work by concentrating all of the little bits of information that different people have. The idiots tend to cancel each other out. This principle underlies complex phenomena like the stock market and the price of commodities. The message is clear. If you want to get the right answer, don't ask just a single expert, and don't ask the mob. Ask a lot of serious people, especially those who disagree with you.
You know, within our society, we have so many nonprofit organizations. We have so many governmental organizations, both state and federal. They're all pursuing their missions within the context of their budgets and within their constituencies, and they do an excellent job. But we also understand that more needs to be done. It doesn't necessarily mean another organization or more money, but we need to have organizations collaborate.
So we had really great involvement. We had over 60 people representing most agencies, a lot of private interests, and a lot of NGOs. And we brought them out here and we said, is there a problem at Sagehen? And everybody kind of goes, yeah. You know, history of this place, clear cut 1800s, and that was when the railroad came through, got hammered again when they found silver in Nevada. And then it's pretty much been left alone and fire's been suppressed. So we have pretty much an even age structure, lost a lot of diversity, and the densities are kind of off the chart. We said then to the group, after they all agreed that we had a problem, it's like, well, what do we do next? And they all go, well, show us your plan and we'll tell you what we think. And we said, well, we don't have a plan. We have a map. And would you guys be willing to work with us to figure out what this plan looks like? And it took a while for them to wrap their head around being invited at the very beginning to figure something out. And they agreed.
Well, you know what that tells me is it tells me that when you get the right people interested in something, change can happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But people need to come in at the beginning. And that's why we didn't have a plan. Because we want everybody to feel like and actually have an active voice in the solution. And I think that's the brilliance of this. But what was interesting was that we're supposed to get all back together as our group. It was our last time as a group before the government would go into their process, this NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act process, which is pretty closed door. And so the collaborative process would end when they went into NEPA. So we were going to meet on a Monday, and I get a phone call from our district ranger, and she says, Jeff, we have some new information. We just found a goshawk with a nest in the key unit for our whole project. So typically when you find those, you don't do anything. And it's like, well, we're bummed because we figured we're dead in the water. And she said, what do you think? And I said, well, you know, I guess all we can do is come Monday when we're all here is we'll just share the new information. We'll just see what everybody said. And she said, perfect. So that Monday we're all fired up. You know, as a group, we're standing in a huge circle out there in the woods. And, you know, we're patting ourselves on the back because we've just been through a pretty amazing process. And then Joanne says, well, we have some new information, and she shares it, and you can see the whole energy level just, you know, have we just wasted a year and a half? So I look at this guy named Craig Thomas from Sierra Forest Legacy. I said, Craig, what do you think? And he said, well, he says, what we're trying to do here is make this place better for a lot of things. I can't see how we can let this bird get in the way of this project moving forward. And it was great to hear that, because in my mind it said that what we were doing as a group seemed to be making sense to everybody. We as a group had written a purpose and needs statement. They go through NEPA, NEPA comes out. The purpose and needs statement was the document that the group had crafted word for word. And all the prescriptions matched exactly what we as a group came up with. Went out for comment. We got 3 letters. Sierra Pacific Industry in support, Sierra Forest Legacy in support, University of California in support. It's the only time the Forest Service has ever had no negative letter. And it's the only time in any project they've had that they had these 3 different entities agree on one thing. So that was good.
You know, all managers and leaders and people that work in organizations, they have a special pride about showing their competence and being able to do their particular task well. But In this case, it's for such a high purpose. You know, it's a spiritual thing. When you call people together to be able to work to improve the landscape, to improve our natural environment, for future generations, I mean, it reaches beyond what a job description has. And that brings out, it elicits their curiosity, their imagination, their interest, you know, things that the poets describe. And that's what we want to touch, and that's what we have to touch. Because the key in improving the quality of life of our natural environment and of our human environment is really how we use the human resource that already exists within those communities. You can't replicate that. And trying to find common grounds can yield results that you really can't even imagine.
That's it, that's all we got.
What's the prescription?
Yeah.
Yes, my seat, I want
It's
to
called a
the next one.
cliffhanger. So where are we with this? So our project is in full implementation. You see, we got $700,000 from the state, and we are the first entity to do forest thinning on Forest Service lands. And it was interesting because when we got the deal worked out and we scrounged up the money, we were told that there's no way in hell the Forest Service is going to figure out how to come up with such an agreement to allow you to do that. It took the Forest Service 2 weeks. It took UC 14 months to figure out if we were willing to sign such a thing and head down that road. We're just about fully implemented. The saw log units are the contractors there now, and we hope to have all the thinning completed by next spring. The Sierra Nevada Conservancy is going to give us another $500,000 out of their next round, and we'll use that money to get fire back on the landscape, and we'll have 3 years to do that. And we thought we were done. I mean, we thought we had done a cool thing. And what we realized was that we put the timber industry out of business in California for what I'll say are very good reasons. And so now we can't get saw logs off the landscape because there's so many dead trees from all the fires that we call black timber. And the mills that are left in California are now at overcapacity with the timber that's coming off of the fires. So we, as a society, whether we want to admit it or not, have made a decision to make a few extra bucks off the black timber while sacrificing the green, the living. So if we had an emergency and these emergency responders popped in, they're going to walk right by the black stuff in their triage. The dead stuff is dead. And then they are going to go for the stuff that's alive that has the best chance of surviving, and that's where they'll focus their energy. And so that's kind of where we are. We're working hard to make the case. And so it's resonating now. So we worked with the Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit. So at Sagehen, we're on the east side of the Sierras. So I like to say that we're in the rain shadow of the Sierras and the funding shadow of Lake Tahoe. But we just launched what's called Tahoe West. So UC Davis and Nevada, University of Nevada, Reno have a big facility at Lake Tahoe called the Tahoe Environmental Research Center. And so the research group that's at the table for the Tahoe West project is Sagehen. So we are using the process that we created at Sagehen for about 80,000 acres, so the entire west shore from Emerald Bay all the way up to around Tahoe City is the project area, about 80,000 acres. And then it's also resonating more broadly. We just signed and we got the UCNRS as one of the signatories on an MOU where we created the Tahoe Central Sierra Initiative. We executed this at the Lake Tahoe Summit this August. And it's pretty much the entire central part of California. So from Auburn, Sierra County in the north, Auburn in the west, Highway 50 in the south, to the state line with Nevada on the east, about 4.4 million acres. We got one of the first grants that has been given by the Carbon Bank, the California Carbon Credit. We got $5 million from them to start pushing these projects. And then we also work with artists. So we work with the Harrisons. We did this big thing on climate change and its effect on the Sierras. And we were pushing them to think about forests, but you can't push the Harrisons anywhere. But over time working with us, they got the story that the forest thing is the big story in our part of the world. So we launched something with them. It's called Saving the West. And it's now starting to resonate. This is an issue that's really affecting the entire western United States. And so we want to elevate this to a level where it's now on political platforms. So we've met with Governor Brown, we've met with Secretary Laird, we've met with all of our senators and congresspeople. So this thing is now ramping up. But that group, we also got a really significant grant from the Forest Service to create what we're calling a bi-state wood utilization team. We have to create a timber industry.
A new kind of timber.
A new kind of timber industry to get us out of this mess that we've made. The existing industry is all for larger diameter trees. We don't have many of those left. And that's not what needs to come out of the landscape to get this resiliency back. We're looking at 12 to 10 inch stuff and smaller. So we have to completely rethink wood and try to come up with brand new ways to pull it off the landscape. So we're advocating for about $1 billion a year in investment in thinning. There's about 13 million acres of forested lands in the Sierras that could have work done on them. So we're pushing for, it's about 1,000 an acre a year to thin. So we want to do 1 million acres a year. And then we want to shift the $1.5 billion that they're currently spending for fire suppression in California. And we want to start shifting the industry of the fire suppression world to people who actually light fires to get this broadcasting burn on the ground, while at the same time maintaining their ability to suppress fires when they happen. So it's happening, and it's really, really, really exciting. And it's something that we as a field station are doing, and I think it speaks to the power of the place. We all work and live in really cool places. And we all have, if we choose to take it, an opportunity to engage, to help our land managers and us figure out different solutions for trying to address some of the challenges that we're facing. When we get the first 3 cuts of this done, turns out by some weird circumstance, a lot of it's because of how much we're now working with artists, we got connected to the founders of, one of the original founders of Burning Man, Michael, and his wife Dusty. And so they've been up to Sagehen a bunch, and when we get the first 3 pieces done, we just said, hey, you guys want to be guinea pigs? I said, sure. So they spent the night at Sagehen. The next morning, I was heading to a meeting, and he grabbed me and he said, Jeff, sit down. So he sat me down and he says, we got to talk. I said, okay, what are we going to talk about? He said, well, Burning Man wants to help you guys tell this story. And I said, whoa, what does that mean? He said, well, we don't know yet. He says, but we want you guys to come to Burning Man this year. So we went, and we were guests at the Founders Camp. And we got to actually see what goes on there, which if you haven't been, you should put it on your list. I mean, it's as twisted and as amazing as you could imagine it. And so after we were at Burning Man, we've gotten back together since then. And so I think where we are is they want to offer us a camp next year, the theme to be forest management. The temple at this year's Burning Man was created from logs that were milled from standing dead from Southern California. And it looks like next year's man will be made from wood that will come from Sagehen as an opportunity to start telling the story. And what Burning Man loves to do is to burn stuff. So this whole getting prescribed fire back on the landscape seems to be resonating with them. And this really incredible journey that we've been on continues, so.
Maybe that's when the next managers meeting should be.
And Burning Man. Yeah.
There you go.
Labor Day weekend, the week up until Labor Day is the Burning Man next year, and that's a good idea.
And we get the hokey pokey around the fire.
I think Vince supports it. Is there a UCOP though? I mean, will they cover the $400 ticket? for each
You know what, I think that we should.
Jeff's gonna bring us to the Founders Camp.
Yeah, exactly.
You still gotta get through the gate on your own.
No, they
Not when you're with the Founders.
Now we do the boundary, yeah.
So that's what we've been up to, and,
Well, I'll carry just the luggage.
no, I'm burning. Thanks.
Very cool. Thanks,
Are they?